"Don't look away." A rancher came for a horse, and found a chained woman. The morning sun rose slowly over the wide, open fields, painting the ranch in a soft golden light. Dust floated lazily in the air, stirred by the gentle breeze that carried the scent of dry grass and earth. The rancher, a tall man with strong hands and a weathered face, tightened the straps on his boots as he prepared for the day. His name was Jack, and he had spent most of his life working the land, caring for animals and helping neighbors whenever he could. Life on the ranch was often quiet, predictable, and hard, but Jack liked it that way. There was something comforting in the rhythm of feeding horses, mending fences, and walking through the fields before the heat of the day set in. That morning, however, the quiet was broken by a knock at the edge of his property. Jack wiped his hands on a rag and went to see who it was. It was Mr. Thompson, a neighbor who owned a small herd of horses. His face was tense, and his hands shook slightly as he pointed toward a trail that led to the far side of the woods. "Jack, one of my horses wandered off last night," Mr. Thompson said, his voice low and urgent. "I tried to follow its tracks, but I couldn't find it." "Could you help me?" Jack nodded, already grabbing his hat. He knew the woods well, and he knew the paths and hidden trails where a horse could wander and get lost. "I'll go take a look," he said, trying to reassure the older man. "Don't worry, if it's out there, we'll find it." He saddled his horse quickly, checking the ropes and saddle to make sure everything was secure. The morning was still cool, and the sun was just climbing higher, warming the earth and casting long shadows across the fields. Jack guided his horse along the trail that led toward the woods, listening to the sounds of birds and the faint rustle of leaves in the wind. He liked mornings like this, peaceful, quiet, with only the soft rhythm of hooves on dirt and the occasional call of a hawk overhead. As he approached the edge of the woods, Jack noticed something unusual. There was a faint sound, almost like a whisper, carried on the breeze. He paused, listening closely. At first he thought it was the wind, rustling the dry leaves, but then he heard it again, a soft, almost desperate sound like someone calling for help. His heart tightened, and he felt a sudden unease. He had spent many years on the ranch, and he trusted his instincts. Something wasn't right. He guided his horse carefully along a narrow path that led deeper into the trees. The branches were thick overhead, blocking out much of the sunlight and casting dark shadows on the ground. The air grew cooler, damp, and smelled faintly of earth and wood. Jack's eyes scanned the area as he moved forward, noticing a broken fence, trampled grass, and footprints that didn't belong to a horse. They were human footprints, small and uneven, as if someone had stumbled through the woods. Jack's heart beat faster. He had come looking for a horse, but now he wasn't so sure what he might find. He urged his horse forward cautiously, keeping his senses alert. The soft sound of something moving in the shadows grew louder, and soon he came to an old barn, partly hidden by overgrown bushes and trees. The wooden walls were weathered, the paint peeling, and the roof sagged as if it had been neglected for years. Jack dismounted, tying his horse to a nearby tree. He stepped closer to the barn, listening carefully. There it was again, a faint, almost inaudible sound like someone trying to whisper or call for help. His pulse quickened. Something told him this was not about a lost horse. He took a deep breath and pushed the heavy barn door open slowly. The inside of the barn was dark, the air thick with dust and the smell of hay and old wood. Sunlight streamed through the gaps in the walls, creating stripes of light that danced on the floor. Jack's eyes adjusted to the darkness, and then he saw her. She was in the corner, a young woman, her clothes torn and dusty. Chains bound her wrists and ankles, and she sat on the floor, shivering. Her eyes were wide with fear, and when she saw Jack, she recoiled slightly, unsure if he was friend or foe. Jack froze for a moment, his mind racing. He had expected a horse, maybe a stray calf, but never this. The sight of the woman chained and alone filled him with a mixture of shock, fear, and determination. He stepped closer, keeping his hands visible to show he meant no harm. "Hey," he said softly, his voice calm but firm. "It's okay, I'm not here to hurt you." The woman flinched at his words but didn't speak. Her lips trembled slightly, and her eyes darted around the barn, as if looking for someone else who might be hiding in the shadows. Jack realized she had been scared for a long time and didn't know whom to trust. "Don't be afraid," he said gently. "I saw you from outside. You're safe now. I'm going to help you." He knelt down a few feet away, careful not to make any sudden movements. He examined the chains, trying to figure out the safest way to free her without causing pain. She watched him warily, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and fear. "Can you stand?" he asked. She shook her head slightly, her body weak and trembling. It was clear she hadn't eaten properly for days and had been confined in this dark, lonely place. Jack's heart ached at the sight, and he felt a surge of determination. "It's going to be okay," he said. "I'll get you out of here." Slowly, carefully, he worked on the chains, testing their strength and trying not to alarm her. The old metal creaked and groaned, but after a few tense minutes he managed to loosen them. The woman's eyes filled with tears as she rubbed her sore wrists and ankles. She whispered a faint, "Thank you," and Jack nodded, giving her a reassuring smile. "Come on," he said. "Let's get you somewhere safe." He helped her to her feet, supporting her as she took her first steps out of the barn. The sunlight hit her face and she blinked, unused to the brightness. Jack guided her gently toward his horse, which watched quietly, ears twitching and nostrils flaring. "Can you ride?" he asked. She nodded weakly, and he helped her onto the horse behind him. She held on tightly, and he could feel her trembling against him. Carefully, he guided the horse down the trail, keeping a watchful eye on the woods around them. The forest seemed quiet again, but Jack remained alert. He knew there might be danger nearby, and he would need to get her to safety before anything else could happen. As they emerged from the trees, Jack thought about what had just happened. He had come out looking for a horse, and instead, he had found a life in peril. The woman's story was unknown, her fear and pain obvious, and he knew that what had started as a simple task had turned into something much bigger. By the time they reached the edge of his property, the woman was quiet, her head resting against his back. Jack spoke softly, telling her everything would be all right and that she was safe now. He felt a strange sense of responsibility. Someone had been in need, and he had been the one to answer that need. He led the horse and the woman to the barn near his home, where he could give her water, food, and a chance to rest. She sat quietly, still wary, as he set out a blanket and some water. He didn't rush her, knowing she needed time to feel safe again. The morning passed slowly, the sunlight warming the barn and filling it with a calm, golden light. Jack watched her carefully, thinking about what had brought her here and who might have done this. Questions filled his mind. Was she lost, kidnapped, or running from something? He didn't know, but he was determined to find out. By noon, she had eaten a little and drank water, her hands still shaking but her eyes a bit calmer. She looked up at him and whispered, Why did you help me?" Jack smiled gently. "Because no one should be left like that. And because someone has to care. You're safe now, that's what matters." As the day wore on, Jack thought about the next steps. Authorities would need to be contacted, and someone would need to investigate what had happened. But for now, the most important thing was that she was safe, warm, and no longer alone. And as he watched the sun move across the sky, Jack realized that this day, this unexpected discovery, would change both of their lives forever. A simple trip to find a horse had turned into a rescue, and the story of courage, compassion, and survival was just beginning. Even as the shadows grew longer in the barn and the air cooled, one thing was clear. Jack would not turn away, and he would not let her face this alone. The sun climbed higher, casting a warm light across the ranch. Jack moved quietly in the barn, careful not to startle the young woman who still sat on the blanket, her eyes wide and watchful. She had eaten some food and drank water, but her hands still trembled, and she hugged her knees as if trying to make herself small. Jack knew it would take time for her to feel safe. Trust was fragile, and fear lingered long after danger had passed. He sat a few feet away, speaking softly. "You're safe now. No one is going to hurt you here." She didn't answer, only nodded slightly, her eyes fixed on the floor. Jack understood. Words alone could not erase the terror she had lived through. Actions spoke louder. He went to check the barn, making sure the doors were secure, the windows locked, and there were no hidden dangers. Once he was satisfied, he returned and sat beside her. "You don't have to talk if you're not ready," he said gently. "Just know that someone is here for you. That's all that matters for now." Hours passed slowly, filled with small, quiet movements. Jack fetched clean water, some more food, and even a soft blanket for her. She watched him carefully but did not protest. There was a cautious understanding forming between them, fragile but present. Jack knew that patience was key. She had been alone, trapped, and scared. Any sudden move could shatter the fragile trust that was beginning to form. As the afternoon sun began to sink, Jack heard a noise outside. He stood immediately, his senses alert. The faint sound of footsteps on gravel made him tense. His eyes scanned the surroundings, looking for any sign of danger. "Stay here," he said quietly, his voice calm but firm. Don't move. He stepped outside, keeping low and moving carefully. There was no one in sight, only the quiet rustle of leaves and the distant sounds of the town. Jack relaxed slightly but did not let his guard down. He knew that danger could appear without warning. Returning to the barn, he sat down and spoke again to the woman. It's going to be okay. I've made sure no one can come near you. You can relax for now. She finally looked at him, her eyes softening slightly. Why did they do this to me? She whispered, her voice barely audible. Jack shook his head slowly. I don't know yet, he said honestly, but I promise you we'll find out and we'll make sure it doesn't happen again. She looked down, her fingers twisting nervously. Jack could see the fear in her eyes, but also a faint glimmer of hope. For the first time since he had found her, she allowed herself to believe that someone cared. Night began to fall and the barn grew darker. Jack lit a small lantern, filling the space with a soft, warm glow. Shadows danced across the walls, but the light was comforting, offering a small sense of safety in the vast darkness outside. He offered her a place to sleep on a clean blanket, away from the cold floor. She hesitated but eventually accepted, curling up cautiously. Jack stayed awake much of the night, listening for any unusual sounds, his mind alert for any threat. He thought about the morning, about how a simple task of finding a lost horse had turned into something far more serious. He didn't regret it. There was no way he could turn away from someone in need, no matter how unexpected the situation. By morning, the woman seemed a little stronger. Her hands were steadier, and she managed to sit up without trembling. Jack offered her a small breakfast, and she ate quietly, her eyes following him as he moved around the barn, tending to the horses and preparing for the day. After breakfast, Jack began to plan the next steps. We need to figure out what happened to you, he said gently. Do you remember anything about where you were before this barn? Anything at all? She thought for a moment, her brow furrowing. It was a house, she said slowly. I don't remember much. I tried to leave, but they didn't let me. Jack listened carefully, taking in every word. He knew that even small details could be important. We'll figure it out, he said. I promise, but for now you need to rest and regain your strength. Over the next few days, Jack helped the woman regain some of her strength. He gave her food, water, and a safe place to sleep. He tended to minor cuts and bruises and made sure she had clean clothes. Slowly, she began to trust him more. She spoke a little, first in short sentences, then in longer ones. She told him her name, Emily, and some details about her life before being trapped. Jack never pressed her for too much at once. He knew that trust could not be forced. Each small conversation, each shared moment built a bond between them. She began to smile faintly, the first sign of hope since he had found her. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jack and Emily sat outside, watching the sky turn pink and orange. The horses grazed nearby, unaware of the human drama unfolding. Emily spoke quietly, almost to herself. I never thought anyone would come for me, she said, her voice trembling. I thought no one cared. Jack placed a hand on her shoulder, firm but comforting. I care, he said simply, and I won't let anything happen to you. Not now, not ever. She looked at him, tears in her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. I don't know how to say thank you enough. Jack smiled gently. You don't have to say anything, just stay safe, that's enough. The next morning, Jack decided it was time to take action. He knew that Emily needed more than just a safe place on the ranch. She needed help from the authorities, someone who could investigate what had happened and ensure her captors could not hurt anyone else. He led her to the edge of the ranch, explaining that they would visit the sheriff's office together. Emily was nervous but agreed. She trusted him enough to follow his lead. The ride to town was quiet. Emily clung to Jack, her head resting against his back. He kept a steady pace, speaking occasionally to reassure her. Each mile brought them closer to safety, but also closer to a world she had feared for so long. When they arrived at the sheriff's office, Jack introduced Emily to the deputies. He explained what he had found, describing the barn, the chains, and the condition in which he had discovered her. The deputies listened carefully, taking notes and asking questions. Emily answered quietly, her voice soft but clear. Jack stayed by her side, offering silent support. He knew she was scared, but he also knew that she had the strength to speak the truth. Her story was important, and he would help her tell it. After giving their statements, the deputies promised to investigate further. Jack and Emily left the office, walking back to the horse stable. The town seemed normal, quiet, and peaceful, but Jack knew that danger could still be out there. He remained vigilant, watching Emily carefully and ensuring that she felt safe. Over the following days, Jack continued to help Emily adjust. He introduced her to some of his neighbors, people he trusted, who could offer additional support. He made sure she had a place to sleep, plenty of food, and someone to talk to when she needed it. Emily began to relax, her fear slowly giving way to cautious hope. She laughed softly at small things, helped with chores around the ranch, and even began to interact with the horses. Jack watched her progress with quiet satisfaction. He knew that healing took time, but every small step mattered. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Emily spoke again. "I don't know how to repay you," she said. Jack shook his head. "You don't need to," he said. "You survived, you're safe." "That's all that matters." Emily looked at him, a faint smile on her lips. I think I can start to believe that now." Jack nodded. He knew that the journey ahead would not be easy. There were still questions to answer, dangers to face, and a past to uncover. But for now, they had a small victory. Emily was safe, and he would continue to protect her until she could fully stand on her own. As the night fell and the stars appeared in the sky, Jack thought about the morning when he had gone out to find a lost horse. He never could have imagined that it would lead him here, to a life in danger and a woman who needed help. But he also knew something important. Courage, patience, and compassion could make a difference. Even in the darkest moments, someone could reach out and change a life. And as Emily drifted off to sleep on the porch, Jack kept watch, ready to face whatever came next. He would not look away, and he would not let her face her fears alone. Together, they would confront the unknown one step at a time. The barn and ranch were quiet now, but the story was far from over. Danger still lingered, questions remained unanswered, and Emily's past was waiting to be uncovered. Jack understood that the real challenge had only just begun. But he also knew that as long as he stayed by her side, she had a chance to heal, to find hope, and to reclaim the life that had been taken from her. And that thought gave him strength. The morning sun spilled over the town, lighting the streets with a warm glow that made everything look calm and peaceful. But beneath that calm, Jack knew there was more to uncover. Emily's story had begun to unfold, but there were still questions, serious questions about who had kept her captive and why. Jack had promised to help her, and he intended to keep that promise, no matter how difficult the road ahead would be. After breakfast on the ranch, Jack guided Emily to his truck. He had arranged to visit the sheriff's office again. The first visit had been necessary to report what had happened, but now it was time for more detailed questions, more investigation and answers. Emily was nervous, her hands twisting together in her lap as they drove through the quiet streets. She glanced at Jack from time to time, searching for reassurance. "You're not alone in this," Jack said gently, noticing her unease. "We'll take it one step at a time." "You'll be safe." Emily nodded quietly, her eyes fixed on the passing buildings. She could feel her heart pounding, and for a moment, fear threatened to take over. But then she remembered the barn, the ranch, and the man who had saved her. She had survived the dark, and she could face this too. When they arrived at the sheriff's office, Jack introduced her to the lead deputy again, a tall man with a calm voice and careful manner. He explained that they needed Emily to recount everything she remembered, as small details could help uncover the truth. Emily swallowed hard but nodded. She was determined to be brave, to take control of her story instead of letting fear control her. Sitting in the interview room, Emily began to speak. Her voice was soft at first, but she grew stronger as she went on. She described the place where she had been held, the small details she could remember about the house, and the sounds and smells that had filled her days of captivity. She didn't remember faces clearly, but she remembered fear, isolation, and the small acts of cruelty she had endured. Jack stayed outside the room, pacing quietly, waiting for her. He trusted her courage, but he also knew how exhausting it could be to relive such memories. Every word she spoke was a small act of bravery, and he silently cheered her on from the hallway. After several hours, Emily emerged, exhausted but resolute. She had told the deputies everything she could remember. Jack guided her to the truck, helping her in and offering comforting words. "You did great," he said quietly. "Every word you spoke matters." The sheriff assured them that an investigation would begin immediately. Officers would search for the house Emily described, question neighbors, and follow any leads. Jack felt a mixture of relief and tension. relief that steps were being taken to bring justice, and tension because he knew danger could still be near. Over the next few days, the investigation moved forward. Deputies visited nearby towns, checked abandoned properties, and interviewed residents. Jack stayed close to Emily, offering support and protection. She began to regain confidence, her fear slowly replaced with determination. She helped the deputies by identifying landmarks and details about the house she had been held in. Each small memory was a clue, each piece of information a step closer to uncovering the truth. Emily's courage inspired the community. Neighbors who had once been cautious began to offer help. Some brought food, others offered rides or assistance in small ways. Jack felt proud of the way people came together, but he also reminded Emily to be careful. Not everyone in the world could be trusted, and she needed to remain vigilant. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Jack and Emily walked along the edge of the ranch. The sky was painted in shades of pink and orange, and the horses grazed peacefully nearby. Emily spoke softly, almost to herself. "I didn't think I could ever face anyone again," she said, "but now I think I can because I have you, and I have people who care." Jack smiled gently. "You're stronger than you know," he said, "and you're not alone. We'll get through this together." The next morning, the investigation brought news. Officers had identified a property matching Emily's description. It was an old, isolated house at the edge of the county, long abandoned but with signs that someone had been there recently. Jack and the deputies planned a careful approach, knowing that if the people responsible were still around, they could be dangerous. Emily's heart raced as they drove toward the property. She gripped Jack's hand, drawing strength from his steady presence. The house loomed in the distance, dark and silent, surrounded by overgrown trees and weeds. It looked empty, but the memories it held were anything but quiet. Jack guided her to a safe position while deputies approached the house. They moved cautiously, checking each corner, scanning for signs of danger. Emily stayed low, watching silently, her emotions a mixture of fear and hope. This place had taken so much from her, but now it could finally reveal the truth. Inside the house, officers found clear evidence of habitation. Personal items, traces of food, and small details that matched Emily's descriptions. It was enough to confirm that she had been held there, and it gave the deputies confidence to continue the search. Jack stayed with Emily outside, helping her remain calm. "This is just the beginning," he said. "We'll find out who did this, and they'll be held responsible." Emily nodded, her jaw set with determination. She realized that facing the place where she had been trapped was terrifying, but it was also empowering. Every step she took toward justice was a step away from fear. Over the following days, the investigation expanded. Officers discovered connections to other properties and questioned potential witnesses. Emily contributed what she could, describing small details and answering questions honestly. Jack remained by her side, offering reassurance and keeping her safe. The story began to spread quietly through the town. People admired Emily's courage and Jack's steadfast support. Some offered help in practical ways, others simply offered words of encouragement. The small community came together, united in a shared determination to ensure justice was done. As the days passed, Emily grew stronger. She began helping around the ranch again, feeding the horses and caring for the animals. Each task she completed reminded her of her resilience, of how far she had come. Jack watched her progress with quiet pride, knowing that every small step forward was a victory over the fear that had once controlled her. One afternoon, as they sat on the porch watching the sky turn gold, Emily spoke again. "I never imagined I could feel normal again," she said softly. "But I think I can. Slowly, but I can." Jack nodded. "It will take time," he said, "but you're not alone. And every day, you'll get stronger." The investigation eventually led to arrests. Authorities identified the individuals responsible for Emily's captivity and brought charges against them. Jack had stayed close throughout the process, ensuring Emily felt safe and supported during each step. She testified when needed, her voice steady, her courage evident. The community rallied behind her, offering support and encouragement. Through it all, Emily began to see herself not as a victim, but as a survivor. The trauma of captivity had left scars, but it had also revealed her strength. And she knew that Jack, with his unwavering support and courage, had played a key role in helping her reclaim her life. By the time the investigation concluded, Emily had begun to rebuild her life. She found confidence in her own abilities, hope for the future, and a sense of safety she had not known for a long time. Jack remained a constant presence, offering guidance, protection, and friendship. Together they faced the past, confronted the danger, and ensured that justice was served. And as Emily looked out over the ranch, watching the horses graze peacefully in the warm sunlight, she felt a quiet sense of triumph. She had survived, she had faced her fears, and she had reclaimed her voice. Jack stood beside her, looking at the horizon, knowing that their journey was not yet fully complete. There would always be challenges, moments of fear, and days when the past threatened to resurface. But they had proven something important. Courage, compassion, and determination could overcome even the darkest circumstances. Emily turned to Jack, a faint smile on her lips. "Thank you," she said, "for everything. I don't know what I would have done without you." Jack placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did this," he said firmly. "You were brave. I just helped you along the way, and I always will." As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of red and gold, Emily felt hope blooming where fear had once lived. The journey toward healing and justice had been long and difficult, but she had survived. And with Jack by her side, she knew she could face whatever came next. The story was far from over, but one thing was certain. Emily had reclaimed her life, and no one could take that from her. The morning air was crisp as Jack and Emily arrived at the courthouse. The town had gathered quietly, some out of curiosity, others to show support for Emily. The case had gained attention over the past weeks, but everyone knew that today was the day that truth would be faced openly. Emily's hands were slightly trembling, but she held them together tightly, determined to be strong. She had survived so much already, and now she needed to see this through. Jack stayed beside her, his calm presence grounding her. He knew that walking into the courtroom would be difficult, but he also knew Emily's courage had grown steadily over the past weeks. "You've done everything right," he said softly. "Just tell the truth and remember you are safe now." Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was tense but orderly. Emily took a seat next to Jack as the judge entered and called the session to order. The captors had been brought in earlier under heavy security, their faces grim and defiant. Emily's heart raced as she saw them, but she remembered everything Jack had taught her: courage, focus, and calm. She drew a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past but also the strength she had gained. When it was her turn to speak, she rose slowly, her voice clear and steady. She recounted everything: her capture, the fear, the isolation, and the small details she remembered about the house and the people involved. Every word she spoke was a step toward justice, and every detail mattered. Jack watched silently, proud of her bravery, knowing how much this moment meant. The captors listened, some sneering, others looking away. But Emily did not falter. She had found her voice, and she was determined to use it. The room was quiet, hanging on every word she said. Witnesses and authorities added details to her story, confirming what she had said. Slowly, the weight of truth began to show on the faces of those responsible for her captivity. After hours of testimony, the judge called for a recess. Emily sat down, exhausted but resolute. Jack placed a hand on her shoulder, reassuring her. "You're doing great," he said quietly. "Almost there, keep holding on." Outside the courtroom, the community had gathered, showing their support. Neighbors, friends, and even people who had only heard the story offered kind words and encouragement. Emily felt a sense of unity, knowing that she was not alone and that people truly cared. The support gave her strength, reminding her that her courage mattered not just for herself, but for everyone watching. The trial resumed, and the evidence against the captors became clear. Items from the abandoned house matched Emily's descriptions, and witnesses confirmed unusual activity in the area. The defense tried to argue small points, but the truth was strong and undeniable. Emily stayed focused, answering questions with clarity and honesty. She realized that facing them in court was powerful. For the first time, she felt in control of her story and her life. Jack noticed subtle changes in her demeanor. She sat taller, spoke with more confidence, and even smiled faintly at small moments. Each step of the trial seemed to heal her, giving her back pieces of the life that had been taken from her. Jack felt a deep sense of pride, knowing that his support had helped her reclaim that strength. Finally, after what felt like endless hours, the judge called for closing statements. The prosecution outlined the evidence and emphasized Emily's courage in coming forward. The defense tried to minimize the actions of the captors, but the truth was too strong to ignore. Emily listened quietly, holding Jack's hand for reassurance, and felt a wave of relief that the moment of reckoning was approaching. When the judge delivered the verdict, the courtroom was silent in anticipation. The captors were found guilty on all counts. Justice had been served. Relief washed over Emily, tears welling in her eyes as she realized that the nightmare she had endured was finally over. Jack squeezed her hand gently, sharing in her triumph without needing words. Outside the courthouse, the community celebrated quietly but meaningfully. Neighbors came forward to offer congratulations, and Emily felt a profound sense of closure. She had survived, testified, and now had her life back. The support of Jack and the community had made all the difference, and she realized she was not alone anymore. Back at the ranch, life slowly returned to a peaceful rhythm. Emily helped with chores, fed the horses, and spent time outdoors, reconnecting with the natural world that had always been a source of calm. Jack continued to mentor her gently, offering guidance when needed but allowing her independence. Emily found joy in small things, the warmth of the sun, the sound of hooves on the grass, and the quiet moments of conversation with Jack. One afternoon, as they walked along the edge of the fields, Emily spoke softly. "I never thought I could feel safe again," she said. "But now I do, thanks to you." Jack smiled, his eyes reflecting quiet pride. "You found your courage," he said. "I just helped you see it." Emily laughed lightly, the sound carrying across the fields. It was a laugh free from fear, a laugh that belonged to someone who had reclaimed her life. She realized that surviving had not just been about escaping captivity, it had been about finding her own strength, her own voice, and her own hope. Days turned into weeks and Emily continued to heal. The memory of captivity remained, but it no longer controlled her. She had faced fear, stood up for herself, and found justice. Jack remained a steady presence, supporting her through moments of doubt and celebrating each milestone. Together, they had confronted the past and emerged stronger. The ranch, once a place of routine work, became a symbol of renewal. Emily found comfort in caring for the animals in the open skies and in the quiet moments that reminded her life could be simple and beautiful. She learned to trust again, first in Jack, then in the community, and finally in herself. One evening, as the sun set in brilliant shades of orange and pink, Emily and Jack sat on the porch, watching the horses graze. Emily leaned back, taking in the peaceful scene, and felt a deep sense of gratitude. She had survived horrors she never imagined, but she had also discovered strength she didn't know she had. "Life feels different now," she said softly. "I feel free." Jack nodded. "You are," he said simply, "and you've earned it. No one can take that away from you." As night fell, the ranch was quiet, filled with the gentle sounds of animals settling for the night and the soft breeze rustling through the trees. Emily felt a sense of peace she had not known for years. The past would always be a part of her, but it no longer defined her. She had reclaimed her life, and with each passing day, she grew stronger, braver, and more determined to live fully. Jack watched her from a distance, proud of the resilience she had shown. He knew that the journey ahead would have challenges, but Emily had proven that courage and determination could overcome even the darkest circumstances. He also knew that sometimes the smallest acts, like noticing someone in need and refusing to look away, could change a life forever. Emily turned to him with a faint smile. "Thank you for not looking away," she said. Jack simply nodded. "I told you I wouldn't," he replied. "And I never will. You're safe now, and that's what matters." The ranch was quiet, peaceful, and alive with the promise of new beginnings. Emily's future stretched ahead, full of hope, resilience, and the knowledge that she had the strength to face anything. The nightmare she had endured was over, replaced by courage, justice, and a life reclaimed. And in that quiet moment under the stars and the gentle night sky, Emily knew she was no longer a victim. She was a survivor, a woman who had faced fear, reclaimed her voice, and found freedom. Jack remained by her side, a steadfast friend and protector, as they both looked toward a future filled with possibilities, peace, and hope. The story of fear, courage, and justice had reached its conclusion, but the lessons remained. That even in the darkest moments there could be light, that one person's courage could inspire change. And that no matter how frightening the world seemed, refusing to look away could save a life and restore hope. Emily had survived, justice had been served, and a new chapter had begun. A chapter of strength, freedom, and the knowledge that she could face the future with courage, dignity, and hope.